And we're back. It's COMP397, and it's week 3, lesson 3, part 2. We just talked about assignment 1, which is due next week. And now we're going to start talking about making a state machine with CreateJS. So what, pray tell, is a state machine? What the hell am I talking about when I say that? Because some of you may not know. You may have heard kind of state machine. But think of it like this. Let me go back and use bubble us for a second to kind of do that. So I'm going to reload the page. Okay. I want to go away from the page, right? And I'll go back to bubble us. See if I can do that without having it come back. There we go. And what I want to do here is imagine if you have a starting point. Okay, so this is your starting point of the game. And the starting point for your game looks like this. I'm just going to make it a little bigger so you can see this. Here's your start screen, right? So this is your start state, if you will. Let's call it a start state, where your game starts. The game starts, you have some buttons in there in your start state that basically show you, do you want to have a tutorial? So one of the options would be, hey, let's go across and do a instructions. So there's your instruction state. So instruction state, and you know what? I also have in here not just my instruction state, but maybe I also have some other things. Like for example, for my start state, I also have my my game state, my gameplay state. So this is like gameplay state. Okay, so this is my gameplay state. In my gameplay state, I play the game, and finally I get to something called my game over state, right? These are the things that I'm going to have, right? So I've got my start state, I got my instruction state. By the way, my instruction state's probably going to be just coming off my my game state or my start state, right? There it is. Now the problem with this tool is it doesn't really allow me to connect or pin or unpin different parts. I can't connect these two together because from my instruction state, if you think about it, I can probably go back and start playing. Sometimes that happens too. Sometimes in gameplay, what we have is not only oops, that's the wrong one I wanted. Let's see if I can delete that one. And of course, we're using Flash in this particular case. What I meant is sometimes in my gameplay states, I also have a state called the tutorial state. There's a tutorial state. And furthermore, my tutorial state is very similar to my instruction state. The instructions kind of give you general instructions, right? That kind of comes off the start menu. But my gameplay state gives you an actual tutorial tutorial round or whatever. Sometimes that tutorial state is off of my start state. You have an instruction state, instruction screen, then you have a tutorial game where you play that's apart from my actual gameplay. All right. In the gameplay state, sometimes it doesn't you don't just play the game and go to game over. Sometimes what happens also, just to give you an idea, is you have various levels. So go to, or progress to the next level, right? All right? So you progress to the next level, and that's the next level state. And then finally, when you progress to the next level, what happens is you get the game over, right? So game over can go either whether you progress to game next level or you go into game over state. Right? And sometimes it's separate. So if I can drag this around and make this like this. I don't know if you get what I'm saying here. But these screens kind of drive how your game is going to look. So let's say, for example, you go into start state, you go into gameplay state, you're starting. Now you could win, you can progress to the next level, or you can get into a game over state. That's the next possibility, right? And then when you're progressing to the next level, this next level kind of takes over the gameplay state. It's not the gameplay state anymore, right? So what I'm doing is I'm moving from one screen to another screen. For example, this, instead of progressing to the next level, this could be level 2, right? This could be level 2. That could be a screen, right? And this could be, the next one would be, you can't get to level 3, as an example, unless you go through level 2, right? And sometimes what happens is in the start state, you can unlock levels, so you can start right at level 3 right away if you've played through level 1 and level 2, right? But all these are states. Here's another thing. Think about a transitional state that doesn't actually start. It's not part of any of this line of stuff at all. You just have something called a screen transition. I'm just going to make this up for you guys so you see what I'm talking about, right? So here's my screen transition that it's kind of sitting off on the side here. Screen transition. Or maybe let's call this transition state. And this transition state could be something like this. You did well. You finished level 1. Now you're going to level 2. Are you ready? Plus start to continue. or press the button to continue, or whatever. So it's almost like an interim transition. Or maybe you have a transition screen, so a fade to black. That could be just a transition screen that comes into play. It looks like it's fading to black, but really it's just an animation that you're putting into play to make it look like you're going from one screen to the next, right? Or some kind of music. You won, and then you have a transition screen that does that, and then finally you go into the next level, right? Or maybe you lost, right? And then you have the transition screen that takes you to that level, right? So, so all these states that we're talking about are when we build our state machine for the game, right? This is the idea of producing a kind of a motion of the game. And doesn't it look similar to what we did before with when we talked about the nodes from our story arc? If you think about it, right? We go from one node to the next node. You have some decisions to make. Go left or go right. Go right. Build your this, and the other way you can build your UI this way too. If you think about it, you can create your UI connections, right? By building out the states. How you're going to move from one screen to the other. I'm just going to close this off for a second. There's another possibility for states that I want to talk about that we're not going to handle right away in our course, but we may get to near the end. And definitely, I might try and get to with the Unity guys, right? My COMP395 class. Let's suppose we're not talking about game state, the game states we're talking about here, but let's suppose we're talking about behavioral states. Okay, so we have the hero, right? Or the an NPC, non-player character, and he's following along, right? He might have a state as an option to be idle. That's the idle state. That might be a state that he has that he can go to, right? And maybe he has another state, so he does something on an idle state. And then another one might be pursuit. So he kind of fights the monsters, right? Maybe another one, which is defense. He kind of moves into a pursuit or defense kind of state, right? Another one might be, so this is a chase, defense, and maybe flee, right? These are the kind of stuff that an NPC, non-player character, and I'm also going to include things like enemy can get into, right? Because a non-player character or enemy AI, right, can have these kind of behaviors, right? Well, these can be just states. He's in an idle state. He's not really doing anything, or she's not really doing anything. They're in pursuit, so they're chasing you, right? They're defending, so they're fending. They're kind of standing the ground, but they're defending, or they're running away, right? Those are all different behavioral states. The other one is there's one other one that's very common as well, which is patrol, right? I'm patrolling, like which we call, for example, an enemy AI might be put in patrol state where he's looking around. Sometimes enemy AIs, if you're going to make behavioral states like this, because this is like, again, heuristics. We're talking about making AI, right? We're not going to get there probably by the end of this course. But the idea is, hey, what's my behavior? What behavior am I going to take, right? So if I'm going to go into patrol state, what's going to activate me from an idle state to patrol state? What's going to make me go from patrol to pursuit? How can I get that? And usually it happens when something changes. A lot of times patrol happens with especially in a 2D world or even a 3D world, right? Where the enemy AI gets line of sight. He gets sight lines on you, and by drawing a straight line from you, not including any obstacles, and if he can connect a straight line, right? So-called ray casting. If I can create a straight line between the enemy and you, there's a line of sight. He sees you, right? And after he sees you, unless you're hiding, because you can be in a hidden state as well, right? Then there might be some random chance that he might find you, and if he does, then he's into a pursuit state, because now he's going from patrol to pursuit, right? When he gets you, we might call it, now he may not be in one state we've missed is the attack state. Let's say he's in attack state, but he's in the attack. He might be able to attack you, right? And he might do this, right, in attack state. He might go into attack state right from pursuit state, as an example, if he's strong enough. But what if he sees you, right? He's in patrol state, but he's in a defensive position, and he's calling for assistance. That might be something he does. So he's in a defensive state. He won't come to you. He's going to stay where he is, but he's going to call for help. That's what he's going to do. That's a defensive state. But if you come to him, he's going to fight to defend himself, right? That's what he's going to do. Or defend the entrance to the cave or whatever he's going to do. He's in a defensive posture. Or he's too weak even to do that, and he runs away when you come closer. Flee, right? So again, he can go from patrol, I'm going to put this on this side, to pursuit, to attack, to defense to flee, depending on the kind of how much health he has and what his state of being is. Is he healthy? Is he not healthy? You know, those kind of things. Sometimes idle state is there if, for example, you're not visible in the game, or you're not part of that game screen, because you don't want to make enemies active all over the world where you can't see them, right? You kind of make them you put them into this idle or dormant state, right? So they're kind of sleeping or whatever you want to call them. And then as soon as you come into the game world or you're close enough, they wake up. It goes from idle, right? An idle or awake state, a sleep state, to awake, right? So let's just, and I'm not going to make a path like this. Actually, I'll do it this way again. Make it so that it's part of our. So a state machine then. So this is a awake state. And this, instead of idle, we'll call it sleep state. Might make more sense to you, right? Again, what we name these things isn't so important as the understanding of what the behavior is going to be. You know, when you start mapping these states out. Now, look at all these states for a potential enemy AI. So he's going from sleep to awake because you come close to his lair, right? He starts to patrol, right? He sees you, so he starts to pursue you, starts coming after you. When he gets close enough, he attacks, right? If he gets close enough. If he's weak, he stands his ground and defends, right? And if he's really weak, he runs away, right? Maybe there's another one. Here's another one I missed. You know, if he's really weak, he runs away so he can heal, right? He goes somewhere to get healed, right? And furthermore, maybe he does another thing that he might have. Instead of being a patrol state, he could have something else that has nothing to do with pursuit or attack, called, you know, gather resource, like a gathering phase or a resource gathering phase, something like that. If you're playing a resource game, where he can get stronger. And sometimes gather also means you know, improve, right? So he's going to either patrol or improve, right? I'm in an improved state where I'm improving my AI. I'm getting stronger, like, or I'm leveling up for some reason or another, or I'm gathering more resources, or I'm getting into one of these other states. So again, a state machine is really great because it's a decision matrix for the game. It's how the game works or how behavior can function, all this kind of stuff. If you're playing a platformer, sometimes you're into this kind of different states for the game. It's the guy running. There's another one for, this is just enemy AI. What about player state? So we've got this one. I captured this one. Let me just get out of this. One more, and then I'll leave the examples just so you understand, because I want us all to be on the same page when I talk about state machine, right? One more time. So here we go into this next one. So now we're the player. Here's the player state, not the enemy AI. Now we're the actual player. The player can have states too. Like, for example, one of them might be the idle state. So where you don't touch the player. He just sits idle, right? And he waits, or the wait state, whatever you want to call it. Then he's in his walk state. So he's walking, right? So movement or walking or whatever. Then, you know what? You're into running. So there's maybe a difference between walking and running, especially in a 3D game. You know, if you play Gears of War, you can walk down the path, or you can set to run, so you're running really quickly, right? When you're jogging along, right? So there's different states, walking or running. You can also have another state, right? Jumping, where the player is jumping, right? And there might be another state where the player, this is kind of how specific it can get, where the player is crouching. These are all different actions that the player can make, right? This isn't necessarily behaviors, but it governs what you can do, what the player, and all these different states change the animation, right? That is being shown whenever you go into these different actions, right? So crouching, and then there's fighting, of course. Usually some kind of fighting. And again, you could have resource gathering and other kind of states that the player can make, right? I'm just gonna, you know, opening a door, right? So there's fighting, crouching, right? We'll say activating an item activation. So you activate an item or an item pickup or something like that, and so on. You can have different states for the player, and then every time you show the player a different state, as an example, he changes his behavior. The way he looks changes. His collision, the way he collides with other objects, or the way he changes color, or something happens to him. He gains health. Something happens. These are the things that can modify his state. So that's what a state machine allows us to do. Now, how do we code a state machine? Because that's part of the stuff that we want to get into. All right, so this is the nitty-gritty part of it. So when I've talked about a state machine, and I think you guys Does anyone not understand what I'm talking about? I think I've given you some three really good examples about a state machine, plus some of this to understand story, narrative, and almost like the idea of storyboarding before you actually code. You kind of do that. But I'm talking now about how do I code the state machine. Now, previously, before when we started off, and I'm just going to go into last week's lesson, right? I'll close this off, and let's see if I can bring up last week's lesson, which was lesson 2, right? In lesson 2, if you remember, last week, we did this. We did this little code here with CreateJS, right? Hello world, goodbye world, right? Well, this right here, right, is a state, right? There is no other states, and there's no way of switching screens from this screen to the other. You're locked into this state forever, this world, if you will. The world is vast. It's as vast as the computer has memory, right? So remember, the starting point, the 0, 0 point for most of our world is the top left corner of the screen, right? That's how we measure. That's the relative mark for how we measure where all the objects in the game world appear. Not so in Unity. In Unity, we have the middle of our screen usually is where the game world starts. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? But in this particular case, we do everything relative to the top left corner of the screen. We go to the right is positive, and down is positive. And if we go up, it's negative. If we go left, it's negative, right? So to the up and left is a negative motion, and to the bottom and right is a positive motion, right? That's the way our game world is laid out. But this is only one scene or one state within our game world. We don't have the option of going to more than one state. So how do we change that? Okay. First of all, we have to make some changes to our code. And in order for us to do that, I'm going to copy our code here. So I'm going to create another little repository. We're going to call lesson 3, and I'm going to put this up as a modification of lesson 2. I'm going to put this up on GitHub, right? But we're going to call this thing lesson 3. So how do I do this, right? There's a couple ways to do this stuff without killing our what we've been doing so far. And one of them is to create a template in Visual Studio. So let me pull this up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's say we have lesson 2. This is another little skill you can learn, an ancillary skill you can pick up here. So I'm pulling up lesson 2. And if you look at lesson 2, right, we have COMP397 lesson 2, and we have some objects. We also have a label class, right? But I want to build on this thing. So what do? I save this as a template in Visual Studio. Let's do it. So I'm going to go File, follow me here, Export Template. And if I export this template, I have this little dialog box that comes up that says Project Template or Item Template. I want to make a project template and go Next. And then it says, okay, what's my template name, right? So we're going to call this, we're going to build on this lesson, and we're going to build off this COMP397 starter lesson or lesson 2. We're going to leave it like this. I'm not going to change the description of the lesson. We're going to call this lesson 2 though, okay? And now you can actually include a different icon if you want, or some preview image of what it's going to look like to go to this other state, right? Okay, and then I'm going to save this thing by clicking Finish. Watch. When I click Finish, it creates my template, right? In Visual Studio 2013, my exported templates. I'm going to have something that shows me COMP397 lesson 2. Now watch. I'm going to close down my lesson. That's how we do it sometimes. And this is how I encourage you to build upon your next version. So this is lesson 2. Let's make lesson 3 from lesson 2. How do we do that? We're going to go File, New, Project. Follow me here. Now that I've saved my lesson, I'm not going to sign in. And I'm going to go to Visual C# instead of just the web piece. I'm going to go to Visual C#, and I'm going to go all the way down to where I have my COMP397 lesson 2 pop up. Take a look. That's actually a choice now as a template. Okay. And now, instead of lesson 2 or lesson 21, I'm going to change this to lesson 3. Yeah.
So I finished the previous template.
Okay. Let me open it up for you again. That's a good piece. So I'm going to go back and do it again from the very beginning. Okay. So again, I'm starting off Visual Studio, right? And that's why this is a good skill to have. Okay. So I'm starting off with lesson 2, right? And I'm going to save lesson 2 as a template. So what do? I go File, Export Template, right? And I'm going to choose Project Template. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to call it COMP397 lesson 2 and press Finish.
Just one.
Once I've done that, then I'm going to close off my lesson, right? I'm going to go File, and I'm going to go New Project. But instead of going to Web, right, I'm going to go to, I won't sign in yet. I'm going to go into C#, the template, C# templates, and I'm going to scroll down until I find my template, which is in alphabetical order, COMP397 Lesson 2, right? And then I'm going to call this thing Lesson 3 instead, just rename it. Okay? I'm also going to make sure it's a new Git repository, yeah.
The ultimate location, how can I modify ultimate location? Because I don't have this. So it's very hard.
I'm going to come on to you in a second. We'll talk about that in a second. I'll show you how to do it because I got to see it. Okay, but so let's say this is lesson 3. Take a look how easy this is. So here's lesson 3. I'm going to press OK. I'm going to make sure it's a Git repository because I want to share with you on GitHub. So we're going to build on what we did last week, right? And press OK. When I do this, now guess what? My project and my is called lesson 3. It's no longer lesson 2, which is good. But I have everything from lesson 2, right? It's just a new repository. I'm going to go up on GitHub, and before we pause for a little break, I'm going to go up on GitHub here, and I'm going to say create a new lesson, a new repository, up on Centennial College called COMP397 Lesson 3, right? And we're going to kind of create my repository here. There it is. Now this time I'm also going to take this URI. So here's my URI, and I'm going to make sure I connect it to Visual Studio, just like we did last time. First, I'm going to go to Team Explorer, and I'm going to go to Changes. And here, I'm going to make sure that I include all my changes. Look at this. I got all these other things here, right? Look, everything. I got no on-track files, but these are all my changes because these are all the files that I'm going to add into my Git repository. I'm doing this all through Visual Studio. So I'm going to name this thing. I'm going to make a commit. And I went through to Team Explorer and went to Home. Take a look, Fahim. So Team Explorer Home, and it shows changes, right? And in here, I'm going to choose some kind of commit statement, which is going to be created base, CreateJS project, right? And I'm going to click commit. And when I do that, I've got a local commit, and now I've got to push it to GitHub. I'm going to click home. I'm going to go unsync commits, put my URI in there that I got from GitHub, right? I got that from here, from GitHub. I put that into here when I click on unsync commits and click publish. And when I do that, it connects with GitHub. And now it looks like this. So now COMP397 Lesson 3 is under Centennial College, right? It's exactly the same as Lesson 2, but we're going to modify it today. So we're going to go to the next level, right? So let's pause there. And you know what I'll do? Actually, I'll add a README. I'll show you how to do the README on the other side. I'll add a README online. So I don't have a README locally. Here's my README file, Comp Lesson 3. I'll say, in this repo, we build our first state machine. Okay, so I'm doing this earlier on than I normally do it in the course. So here it is. I'm realizing I have to. I didn't rename my my videos properly because they're named COMP397. So I'm gonna have to rename them with F2015. I'll just rename them later on. They'll go back. They'll kind of be added onto your list there. Okay, so again, here's my first state machine, and if you look down here, when I add a README file, it says I need to make a commit. So I'm going to click Commit New File. So there's my repo. In this repo, we build our first state machine, right? That's what it says. But now I'm behind. Locally, I don't have that file, the README file, right? How would I get it? Well, I can do a pull. If I go to Team Explorer, and if I go to Home, and if I go unsync commits and do a pull, then I can pull it back down. I can pull it down from my from GitHub, right? And if I go back to Solution Explorer, you can't see it, but it's actually physically here. The README file is part of our solution, right? In fact, if I refresh, and if I show all files, if you look at this little icon right here, if I show all files, here's all the files in my script, right? Somewhere in here, probably in the folder here. If I go back out to GitHub, it's going to be outside of my project folder where I can see my solution files. There's going to be a README file that says, hey, this repos for us to build our first state machine. Okay. So let's take a short break. I'm going to come and fix your problem, right? And then when we get back, we'll actually do some of the coding. I've kind of created our container for how we're going to move forward, and I've shown you a way of creating a template. So when you move from version 1 of your code to version 2, or let's say you're moving from point 1 to point 2, you make a template from your previous version. That's another way to do it. And then you're moving to the next version, but you have your original version untouched and unsullied in a template, right? So you leave that as almost like a starting point for the next version, almost like you're creating a new branch. Now, there's different ways to do this. This is a very simple way, and you create backups of your file all at the same time, right? Almost like backups of the backups. Okay.